So the topic, the theme is deal breaker. So here's a story. My mother was a deal breaker. She passed away in 2007, and obviously as a mama's boy, that hit me hard. But she was a deal breaker. And by deal breaker, I mean that if other people make deals that somehow were going to affect her baby little boy, and it didn't work for her, it was her job to break up that deal. For instance, when I was in the 7th grade, I was the first chair trumpet player in the school band, and I was the starting left tackle on the football team. The coach was very upset that I was in band, and the band director was very upset that I was in football. Pudge had to make a choice. You're either going to be in band or you're going to be in football. You're not going to be in both. I come home one day moping. My mother looks at me and says, "What's your problem?" I said, "Well, coach says I got to pick football or band. Mr. Schultz says I got to pick band or football." She looks at me and she says, "Come with me." We go to the family Oldsmobile. We drive to the school. My mother finds the coach and she finds the band director. She looks at me and she says, "Stay right here in the car." She gets out of the car. The 5'3" little woman walks outside, grabs both men by the shirt collar, and all I visually see is her doing this at the two of them. After a few minutes, she comes back to the car, she gets in and she says, "You're doing both." And we drove home. My mother had broken the deal. This past February, I died twice. Once at home and once in a hospital. I had an infection in my left lung about the size of my hand. And being a typical man, I thought I was fine. And the reason why I thought I was fine is because I was only throwing up 4 times a day. Okay, so I got this, no problem. Well, one day, it was a Saturday. Saturday is my favorite day of the week. Saturdays, they have a different look, they have a different smell. There's just something awesome about a Saturday. It's my favorite day of the week. Back when I was a kid, that was when you watched morning cartoons. You love Saturday. When you go to college Friday night, you can party all night long. Why? Because next day's Saturday. And then when you party all day Saturday, you get to party again. Why? Because next day's Sunday. Saturday's the best day of the week. Why in the world would I die on a Saturday? But I did. I died in my bed in my home this past February. I was laying in my bed and all of a sudden I couldn't move. And the room became very bright. I was very scared because I couldn't move. I knew I was sick. I had already thrown up twice. I knew I was due for 2 more. I looked at the foot of my bed and there was the Grim Reaper. I'd love to say it was a Monty Python moment where he's standing there with the black robe and the black hood and he's sickling a whole bit. But I got news for you kids. That ain't the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper is a vibe. It's an enigma. And he was standing at the foot of my bed and he had come for me. I started sobbing hard because I wasn't ready. It was a Saturday. I don't die on a Saturday. I got stuff to do today. And I realized that I wasn't going to do anything that day. So I just, after a few moments, I realized, wow, this is it. This is my moment. At that moment, the room became very bright. And all of a sudden, my mother was sitting at the foot of my bed. When I was a little boy, my mother, when I would get sick, to make me feel well, she would hum to me. She would go, and as a little boy, it would make me feel well. All of a sudden, as much as I'm able to look at you, or look at you, she was right there. And I felt her put her hand on my leg. And all of a sudden, she was going, and it was real. She was right there, and I was like, she was talking. I could hear her voice. And then she turned and she looked at Grim. She got up, and just like she did with my football coach and the band director, all I saw her was just waving her finger at him, and Grim actually was standing there, bowing his head, and just shaking his head, did one of these, and then he left the room. My mother came back to the foot of the bed, put her hand on my leg, and started going, After about 30 minutes, she left the room. The room got dark. All of a sudden, I could move. I was alive. I got out of the bed. I ran to my wife going, "You are not going to believe what just happened." A week later, I was in the hospital. Once again, I'm lying in a bed, and I can't move. This time, there's a doctor and 2 nurses standing above me, and they're going, did he say if he wanted to be buried or cremated? And I'm like, whoa, 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 hang on. Ask me, I'm right here. I'll tell you, and the answer is neither. And they kept talking like if I wasn't in the room, and suddenly I realized it's because I wasn't in my body. I was looking down at me, and I was looking down at the doctor, and I was looking down at the nurses. And then all of a sudden I realized there was the deal breaker. And she was standing there at the foot of the bed. But standing at the foot of the bed was also Grim. He had come back for me. My mother looked at him, and once again I saw this 5'3" little angel waving her finger at him. I'd love to say I'm making this up, but this really happened. And she was waving her finger at him. And once again, he just put his head down, shook his head, and he left the hospital room. I went back in my body. The nurses and the doctor walked away. That was February. I just celebrated my 53rd birthday this past Wednesday. Wasn't supposed to see it. I'd love to say I'm making this stuff up, but you can't. Because to put a bow on the end of this story, my father had a stroke this week. He's in the hospital right now. Word on the street is that the deal breaker's in town. She passed away 2007 today.
Wow.
That's my story. Thank you.